Hi, I thought I'd come and talk a little bit about something called Pyrrhonism. And Pyrrhonism is a very obscure aspect of philosophy. Not many people have heard of it. It's quite hard to get material on it, but it's really, really fascinating. And it's actually, in many ways, quite comparative to some forms of Buddhism, as it's all about the suspension of judgment and therefore the freedom from anxiety, the freedom from the suffering that comes with holding judgment. Originally, it was aligned with what used to be skepticism. It used to come from the word skeptikos, which meant seeker of truth. But over time, skepticism has become kind of corrupted, and very much so in modern media, we see that as very prevalent, where someone who says they're a skeptic, and what they are actually saying with that is that they hold a belief position of non-existence. So for example, someone might say, well, I don't believe there is a God because I'm a skeptic, or I'm a skeptic because I don't believe there is a God. Well, traditionally, that just wouldn't really have held water for the original skeptics, because the idea was to suspend judgment on all things that are non-evident. So for example, whether you believe in God or whether you believe there is no God, either way, you can't prove it, and they're both belief positions. And this gets muddled quite a lot, especially in a lot of media and pop science and pop psychology. And it does lead a lot of people to feel confused, frustrated, and just perpetually wrong. And so it's with an absolute delight that I can share with you these far more, I think, enlightened concepts, and really relate to Pyrrhonism instead of skepticism, just to make it as a fundamental difference. Pyrrhonists, essentially, they suspend judgment of all beliefs, including the belief that there are no true beliefs. So in Pyrrhonism, you really suspend the judgment that there's any kind of sense of rightness or wrongness. They take things which are self-evident to be perfectly reasonable, such as, for example, you see someone chewing, you can probably come to a reasonable conclusion that they're eating food. Or you might see someone has a scar of some kinds, and you can, probably reasonably draw on that they've at some point had an injury. So those things would be considered evident. But for all other things which are considered non-evident because they cannot be proved or disproved, like for example, there's a sky god that rides the sun as a chariot across the heavens every day. Okay, a skeptic today might say, well, there's no evidence for that, so I don't believe it. A Pyrrhonist would say, I don't know. And the crucial thing here is that it's a practice, it's not a belief system. It's a practice of letting go of judgment, but also the need to judge and the need to hold a position. This only ever leads to suffering, to anxiety, to the stress of having to constantly evaluate these things for trueness or falseness and having to defend them all the time, rather than just allowing yourself to be. So I'm gonna leave that with you. I can recommend a really great book on that, and this is it here, Pyrrhonism. There you go.